Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited because I have a guest with me today. She's really special because she is a holistic cannabis practitioner, and she's my fellow dietitian friend, Emily Kyle. Thank you for joining us, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Well, we're going to be talking a lot about all sorts of issues when it comes to CBD and cannabis, which is such a hot topic right now. So we're really excited to have you with us, Emily. And first of all, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started in the field of nutrition, in particular cannabis?
Absolutely. So I started in nutrition kind of with a personal experience, as we all do. My little sister had type 1 diabetes when we were kids. So I just kind of grew up really understanding the importance of food as medicine. And then I have always personally been a cannabis user. I've talked about that kind of in my story to manage anxiety and depression. And over the past year, I really saw the interest in cannabis growing, especially with the CBD boom. So I decided to make my personal passion a professional one, went back to become a holistic cannabis practitioner, and have really integrated cannabis in every facet of my business now.
That's so timely because it's so important and popular. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, right?
So much, too much. It's disturbing to me, the lack of education that's out there.
Yeah, so it's really great that you're out there providing reliable
Yeah,
information because I know that I always recommend people look at what you're doing because of all of this. You know, when people are Googling the topic, they're just going to find so much misinformation out there. So,
definitely.
if you could just start with the issue of CBD because it's
Yeah.
so popular, I see it in everything. So, what should people know about CBD in terms of the real scientific health benefits?
So I always say, first and foremost, CBD is not a cure-all. It's not a magic pill. It needs to be used in conjunction with a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle to work best. But the preclinical evidence is really, really strong in showing that CBD is incredibly effective at managing inflammation, very helpful for certain anxiety disorders, and really starting to study the role of pain and how CBD can help with chronic pain as well.
Okay, so those are the areas where we know the most about
Correct.
inflammation, pain, anxiety. And I've read about that too. That makes sense. So all of these other things you're seeing about CBD, saying that it does everything to cure cancer and what do you say to those kinds of claims?
It very well could, but we don't know that for sure.
Mhm.
That's why the FDA is slapping around companies left and right for making these claims because there is no scientific evidence to prove it. And it's okay to sell the product, but you can't sell claims that are not validated yet.
And that's right. I've been seeing in the news lately that the FDA is coming after companies, right? Is it because they're over promising on CBD?
It's because of the claims that they're making. You cannot say a product cures cancer when you have no scientific evidence to prove that it does.
Okay. So, that the government is stepping in and trying to regulate things a little bit, which is probably a good thing because there's so much misinformation.
We need regulations. I'm nervous, how much is the government going to step in? But at this point, it is so unregulated. We need someone to come in and set at least a safety standard.
That's great. So now one of the things that I get questions on is there are so many CBD products. Like when you're looking, how do you know the one to choose? What are you looking for? What do you recommend when people are actually looking for a CBD oil or product that would be good for them?
So, this is actually the number one question that I get. So, I have created my 4-step real method for choosing a safe CBD product. So, we'll use the acronym REAL. R stands for raw material. Where is your hemp coming from? I want to see that it's grown in the USA, ideally organic if possible, and you should know the state of origin.
Okay.
After that, we'll go to E, which is extraction method. So, how are they getting that CBD off the hemp plant and into the bottle? The gold standard right now is supercritical CO2 extraction. The other common forms of extraction that are not as ideal are alcohol or ethanol extraction or butane extraction. Then we'll go to additive ingredients. I'm really big on this one. I don't want to see sugar or artificial dyes or any kind of unnecessary ingredient in. You should ideally only have CBD and a high quality carrier oil like coconut oil.
Okay.
And then last for L would be lab testing. We need that third party lab testing to verify what you say is in the product is actually in the product.
Wow, that's really great that you put it together in a handy, tip form like that. Do you have that resource on your blog that we can send people to?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to you. I have it inside. It's called A Guide to Using CBD Oil. And it's just kind of like this checkbox that people can use for any product and really just kind of quickly go through. And if it meets those check marks, usually you're pretty good to go.
Okay, so we'll make sure to share that in our show notes
Thank
for our
you.
interview today, because that sounds really handy. Because that's another question I get a lot of is how to choose those products. And do you find that most of the brands are sharing that kind of information? Is it hard to do homework on that?
It shouldn't be. I always tell my clients, if you have to dig for any of that information, you can move on to it.
Move on to the next one.
Know what people are going to expect. And ideally, when FDA regulations come in, they're going to kind of outline this a little bit better. But brands know what's coming. Brands know that the only ones who are going to last in this industry are the ones who are providing quality products, right? And so if that information isn't available, if you have to ask for lab testing, go to a new one. It should be readily available on their website.
That's perfect. So now the next question is dosing. I've noticed that different bottles have different amounts, so, and it could be, the different type of products has different amounts per dropper. So can you explain a little bit about the dosing?
Oh gosh, this is why we need regulation, right? Because there is no standard anyone can put any label they want out there. And that's why it gets confusing. Some companies will put the milligrams of CBD per bottle. Some companies do it per dropper full. And that's where it gets really confusing. So I always like to start with a standard. Most bottles, if you're looking at a tincture, are 30 milliliters. And that's helpful to know. And I'm not great with milligrams, milliliters, things like that. If you have a bottle that says it's a 500 milligram bottle, and you know that it's 30 milliliters, a dropper is usually 1 milliliter. So you'll get 30 serving sizes out of that. So you'll take 500, divide it by 30. You get about 16 grams of CBD per dropper. Okay. Now, one thing that I always like to emphasize is, what does 16 milligrams of CBD mean to me or you? We don't know. It's a starting point, but we all react differently. We all have different endocannabinoid systems. And that's why there are no dosing recommendations. It's truly a self-experiment where you experiment on yourself to see what kind of reaction your body has. Yeah, that's what I've been reading a lot of. And so do you recommend starting with just that lower dose, like perhaps at 16 milligrams? I recommend people just start at 10 milligrams and go from there. It's very low. It's a safe place to start. People can go, I've read studies that CBD is safely taken at up to 1,500 milligrams per day. Wow. So 10 is relatively small, but people have different reactions. And so it's important to start low and really kind of be patient with the process. I tell people CBD is not something you take one time and you're like, wow, I feel amazing. Really need time to build up in your body. And most of my clients, when I'm working in private practice, say that they don't really notice the positive impact that CBD has had on their life until they stop taking it. And those symptoms, pain, joint pain, irritability, basically kind of creep back in. They don't necessarily realize they are feeling as well as they are, but it just goes to show CBD is silent. It's a silent helper. It helps your body where it needs to be helped. And it's just not always so apparent in your face. Yeah. And does the dosage depend on what you're trying to treat? I mean, you talked about like inflammation, anxiety, all these pain. Yeah. Does the dosage is the science showing that the dosages are different for each of those sorts of conditions? Really, the science shows more that it's based on the individual rather than the condition, which makes it ultimately really, really hard to find a standard dosage. Okay. So really knowing yourself and starting. It's hard. And then other factors come into play too. weight, height, gender,
Yeah.
medications. It's just such a very complicated,
Yeah.
and as you and I both practice like individualized nutrition, this just takes it one step further in that individualized
Mhm.
healthcare because it's so nuanced.
Right. Well, that sounds like a really good strategy. Start out low and get to
Yeah.
know your own
Go
reaction.
slow.
Yes. Okay. So that also brings me to my next question about safety. I mean, are there any potential safety risks that people should be aware of?
Absolutely. So the first safety risk is getting a safe product. That's probably the biggest issue out there today. Otherwise, science shows that CBD is very well tolerated by the body. We know that it does not impact heart rate, blood pressure, or body temperature. And so, in terms of other medications, it's relatively safe. The World Health Organization has said that they don't believe it indicts any type of dependence. So we know CBD is safe, but the product that you're getting, we have to know that is safe.
Hmm.
And then we also have this kind of unresearched area of drug interactions. So we know that CBD utilizes the cytochrome P450 pathway in the liver. So any medication that also does needs to really be discussed with a physician before taking CBD to ensure that the CBD isn't going to have a bad reaction with that.
Okay. Okay. That sounds like something
A
important
lot.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Is there anything else that you think people should know about CBD, if they're considering trying it in their diet regimen?
I always like to tell people CBD is just the first step into the world of cannabis. There's over
Mhm.
110 different cannabinoids, THC being one of them. And for a lot of
Mhm.
conditions, it's the ratio of CBD to THC that makes a difference. And in most cases, very small amounts of THC are needed to see the benefit of the CBD.
Okay. Well, that's a great segue into my next question, and that's about cannabis. And
Yes,
I'm really interested in cannabis and foods because I'm a dietitian.
of course.
So, I want to really ask you a lot of these questions because I live in California. So now it's legal, and I'm just
Hey.
seeing so much cannabis in foods,
Yes.
in edible form, whether it's chocolates or baked goods or beverages or gummies. And so, what about the scientific evidence on cannabis edibles in foods? What do we know about any potential health benefits?
So we know that evidence is severely lacking. We also know that when orally consumed, cannabis can act differently in the body, especially THC. So for me personally, eating CBD isn't my first choice because by the time it goes through the liver, you have about approximate 6% bioavailability, which is
Mm-hmm.
lower than the traditional 30% that you get with like a sublingual tincture. So
Okay.
eating CBD is kind of more like a novelty. Otherwise, you need to eat more of it to get the same amount or the same
Mm-hmm.
effect. But
Mm-hmm.
eating THC for 4 out of 5 individuals in the liver, your body will process THC into THCOO, which in some individuals, when there's too much, can create these hallucinogenic effects. That's why
Okay.
people have these really crazy experiences when eating edibles. So I
Mm-hmm.
always like to put the disclaimer out there that eating CBD is entirely different than eating THC. And THC really does take a little bit of education before jumping right into eating it because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to consider.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So um, I know there's not a lot of science, but are there any areas that seem like there might be some potential health benefits coming along? I know that the research is really difficult because it's been hard to even do the clinical research, right?
Right. Not only is that hard to do the clinical research, but the cannabis plant is so unique and has so many compounds that we're studying for health.
Mm-hmm.
So we're studying the different 100 different cannabinoids. We know CBD and THC mostly, but we're starting to learn about CBN and CBG and CBC. But then we also go into terpenes, which you probably know for more of a plant science perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but we're really starting to research how the terpenes in cannabis can benefit health. Specifically, they're studying myrcene right now and how it really interacts with the cannabinoids, how the phytonutrients all interact together. It's called the entourage effect. That's why they really don't recommend like isolating singular sources out of the
Mhm.
plant. They believe it should all be together for that synergy. Um,
Right.
so it gets so difficult, and then we tap on our own unique biochemistry, and it just makes it
Mhm.
so difficult to say how any one person would react with any said dose of medication, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Very complicated.
Very complicated. And again, going back to the importance of self experimentation. If I took
Mhm.
10 milligrams of CBD and ate it, and you took 10 milligrams of CBD and ate it, we could have vastly different reactions,
Yeah.
positive or negative.
Right. I know that, historically there's been evidence for like things like cancer treatment and,
Mhm.
like dealing with anorexia related to medical conditions and anxiety. And so it's that area seems to be pretty well accepted in the nutrition field. Doesn't it seem that's a pretty standard use for cannabis?
I think that we are going to hugely benefit from applying cannabis to a lot of the different conditions that we treat
Yeah.
in nutrition. That's why I really think cannabis and nutrition pair so well together.
Yeah. Right.
It's plant medicine either way. You're eating it, you're using it in
Mhm.
your daily life. Um, they really
Mhm.
go well together, especially when we practice like both of us, where more of a holistic perspective, kind of looking at the whole person and their lifestyle.
Right.
It just fits in so perfectly. That's why I think dietitians need to be educated and excited to enter the space.
I agree. I mean, this is a plant that's been around for centuries and used in traditional medicine, right? So it's like something
Absolutely.
we should embrace and harness and understand and become, really knowledgeable about. So I really appreciate what you're doing in your work
Thank
because,
you.
we really have to learn a lot.
We do. And I'm learning every day. We all learn something new every day. And that's kind of the exciting part about it. It's the
Yeah.
same as nutrition. We learn new things every day. It's an evolving field.
Right. So talking a little bit more about dosing. I know you mentioned a little bit about, how with cannabis, everybody has their own unique, response based on their unique self. But could you give us a little more pointers about dosing when it comes to edible cannabis? Because I know that there's like different strengths and that could be found in edible foods. So, what advice do you have there?
Yeah, so it first really depends on if you're having a CBD or a THC infused product, or in California where it's recreational and there's a lot more options, they'll be put in ratios, a CBD to THC ratio. So a 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio is probably the most common. And what we know is that CBD helps to offset some of the unwanted effects of THC. So that's why that 1-to-1 ratio is ideal. So if you're going
Okay.
for an edible, make sure you're understanding, does it have CBD and does it have THC? And then you want
Okay.
to make sure that the dosing is extremely clear. How many milligrams of CBD or THC are you going to be getting in that piece of chocolate versus the
Yeah.
bar of chocolate? Because
Hmm.
that's really important too in understanding how much should you take. The hard part about THC edibles is the onset time could be anywhere from 1 to 4 hours. So if you eat that
Hmm.
little piece of chocolate and you're like, that didn't do anything for me, and then you eat another one, but it's not till 3 hours later that you feel the effects, that's where some people get in trouble and accidentally take too much. So knowing how much you're taking and then being patient. And I always tell
Hmm.
people, if you're doing edibles for the very first time, especially THC edibles, you should do it in the comfort of your own home. You should not be out
Hmm.
in public. You should not be at a party. Too much THC can cause paranoia, anxiety, panic attacks for people. So I really suggest going low, going slow, and doing it from the comfort of your own home first so you can learn to
Yeah.
understand how your body is going to react,
Hmm.
and then make a safe plan from there.
That's a really great piece of advice, especially allowing time. That
Yeah.
it could take. Because I've read a lot about people taking more, thinking it hasn't. Oh, it's not enough. I don't feel anything, and then they're taking too much. So that's a really
Yes.
important piece of
And the
advice.
effects of THC edibles can last much longer as well. So maybe if you didn't plan enough time before you have to go to an event or something, it's important to time it, so that you don't have to go do anything when maybe you're not in the state to do anything productive.
Yeah. That's really great. So, are there any other risks? I mean, you talked about some of the risks, but are there any other risks that people should know about when it comes to edible cannabis products?
I think I'm just going to get up on my dietitian soapbox for a minute. My one thing I'm really passionate about that drives me crazy is the mixing of this plant based medicine with ingredients that we know to not be beneficial to health.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the CBD gummies, the CBD chocolate,
Mm.
like I don't understand how we can logically think that we're going to use CBD to manage inflammation in the body when we're eating it in a sour gummy worm covered in sugar. It
Yeah.
just really it makes it more of a novelty. I think people think of it more as a joke, and it makes me think that people aren't taking health seriously. Cannabis is a
Yeah.
great medicine, but it cannot be used alone. It needs to be used with nutrition interventions for optimal wellness. And so
Hmm.
it's fun sometimes to make brownies, but if we're looking for optimal health, consuming products made with CBD or THC, but not other nutritious ingredients, just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's a really interesting perspective. I don't hear people talking about that enough. I mean, how do you suggest using it in edible products that would be more healthful?
I always suggest that people do it it's just like nutrition. Anything that you make in the comfort of your own home is going to be healthier because you can control the ingredients, you know what's put in
Yeah.
there. So we have access to butter and oils and all sorts of different options. So you can take
Hmm.
that back home, and like I have a recipe on my website for whole fruit gummies. You don't have to go
Oh.
buy the sugar gummies at the store. You can easily make them at home in the comfort of your
Hmm.
own home. So I really am excited about the cannabis culinary scene that's growing, but I just don't want nutrition to be left behind.
Yeah, that's really great. And it reminds me that I'd love it if you could share some of your resources, like your website and any links. Of course, I'll include these in the notes for this interview. But if there's anything that you'd like to add about some of the resources you have in this whole field of CBD and cannabis, that would be
Oh,
great.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be turning my whole entire website into a cannabis resource.
Wow.
So my website is emilykylenutrition.com, and on there I have my blog and what I call the Cannabis Collective, which is just a resource of all of my cannabis articles. And in next, we're kind of transitioning all of our recipes into cannabis infused recipes so that we can start to show people how to use cannabis in their kitchen at home so they can make healthier food.
Wow. And do you sell cannabis like the CBDs and oils and everything on your
I do. I have a very small product line. I
Okay,
wasn't
great.
sure if I was going to go for it, but it just makes it easier knowing 100% I know that it's safe. So when I'm recommending it to clients, I don't have to kind of do the back and forth and looking at
Right.
their products and going through there. So it's more of a peace of mind thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're vetting the products. I mean, I would appreciate that as a consumer because then I don't have to like read all of the background,
Take the
you
time to do
know.
it. Yes, I did the
So
hard work first.
exactly. I think that's a great resource.
Thank you.
So, Emily, thank you so much for joining us. I learned so much about this
Oh, good. I'm
whole
so glad.
field and I read about it all the time. So, this has really been helpful. And I know everybody out there
Awesome.
is going to love this too.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you so much for joining us, Emily, and thank you for joining us. You can find all of this information on the blog that goes along with this interview. So please check it out at SharonPalmer.com. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been Sharon Palmer reminding you to live and eat well.